Second part, I was not going to this dinner unprepared. I meticulously sifted through old texts, unearthing all his falsehoods, dates he claimed to be at work, conferences that never existed, stories about coworkers that Cody confirmed were fabricated. Even photographs Ryan had posted of himself at work events that were actually just stock images downloaded from the company website. Friday night, Vanessa arrived to assist me in selecting an outfit. I won't deny, a part of me yearned to appear stunning, purely out of spite. However, we collectively decided the most effective approach was to look pleasant, but not overtly trying too hard. We settled on a simple black dress that Ryan had once remarked made me look average, which I now understood was his peculiar attempt at a backhanded compliment, given the consistent praise I received whenever I wore it. I barely slept Friday night. What if this plan backfired? What if his family sided with him? What if I froze and couldn't go through with it? By Saturday morning, my nails were bitten down to nothing, and I had cycled through approximately 17 different scenarios in my mind. Around noon, Ryan texted again, "Looking forward to seeing you tonight. Wear something nice. My parents are excited." I did not respond to that either, allowing him to believe whatever he wished. I spent the afternoon preparing with a strange amalgam of dread and anticipation. Vanessa helped me with my hair and offered a pep talk when my resolve began to waver. At 5:30, I entered my car and headed towards his parents' house. I had to pull over once, as my hands were trembling too violently to drive safely. I sat there for a minute, performing those breathing exercises from that meditation app one had downloaded months ago, but never actually utilized. What was I doing? Was this entirely crazy? Perhaps I should simply block Ryan on all platforms and move on with my life like a normal person. But then I envisioned him at his birthday dinner, likely spinning some fabricated narrative about our relationship, perhaps even portraying himself as the victim, and my resolve hardened. I pulled up to his parents' house at 6:15, fashionably late, which I knew would annoy Ryan. Several cars were already in the driveway. It appeared the entire family was present. I checked my makeup in the rearview mirror, took one final deep breath, and approached the door. Ryan's father opened it with a broad smile and a hug, ushering me inside. The house was redolent with the aroma of Tina's famous pot roast, and for a fleeting moment, a pang of sadness struck me. I genuinely liked Ryan's family, and this would likely be the last time I would see them. I rounded the corner into the living room, and there was Ryan, drink in hand, mid-laugh at something his cousin had said. He froze upon seeing me, clearly not anticipating my actual arrival despite what he had told his family. For a split second, panic flickered across his features before he composed himself and approached with a fake smile. He gave me a stiff hug and whispered, "You actually came. We need to talk privately." I simply smiled and stated, loud enough for everyone to hear, that I wouldn't miss his birthday for anything, especially since he had been telling everyone we had big news to share. The color drained from his face. Tina clapped her hands excitedly and inquired if this was what she thought it was. Ryan's sister gave me a knowing look. His dad began joking about finally getting grandchildren. Ryan gripped my elbow a little too tightly and attempted to steer me towards the hallway, but his mom called out that dinner was ready and everyone needed to be seated. As we all took our places around the dining table, with Ryan nervously watching my every move, my phone vibrated with a text from Cody, "On my way. 15 minutes out." Ryan leaned over and hissed, "What are you doing here?" I thought after the restaurant. I just smiled sweetly and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Oh, I wouldn't miss the chance to tell your family about what happened at that restaurant, Ryan." I'm sure they'd love to hear that story. The look of absolute panic on his face as his mom started bringing out the food was worth every second of anxiety it took to get there. Game on. Second update. I'm finally ready to share what transpired at Ryan's birthday dinner. My apologies for the delay. I required a mental health day after all the drama. Plus, my Wi-Fi has been erratic because my neighbor borrowed my password and apparently downloaded the entire internet. Where did we leave off? Right, me sitting at the dinner table with Ryan's family while he was in a state of panic about what I might reveal. So, there I was, surrounded by Ryan's family, his parents, Tina and Ralph, his sister, Kayla, his grandmother, and 2 cousins whose names I perpetually confuse. The table groaned under the weight of Tina's famous pot roast, those exquisitely buttery mashed potatoes I've literally fantasized about, and a sophisticated salad that no one would genuinely consume, but everyone would politely commend. The initial 20 minutes were excruciatingly awkward. Ryan persistently attempted to monopolize the conversation while shooting me furtive, cautionary glances. I merely smiled and offered the bread rolls, savoring the subtle twitch in his left eye each time I prepared to speak. Petty? Perhaps. Satisfying? Absolutely. Tina, bless her heart, maintained the conversational flow. She inquired about my family, my profession, the usual small talk. When she enthusiastically mentioned how proud they all were of Ryan's big promotion, I nearly choked on my water. I glanced at Ryan, whose face had assumed the exact hue of the beets on the table. Ryan interjected, detailing how his team was crushing their targets and how his boss was practically grooming him for senior management. I simply nodded along, observing him dig himself deeper with each embellishment. Ralph, who has always been the more reticent type, abruptly questioned Ryan about the Johnson account, apparently some colossal deal Ryan had purportedly been spearheading. Ryan's response was so vague it could have been a generic horoscope, filled with jargon about strategic pivots and leveraging core competency that literally conveyed nothing meaningful. His sister, Kayla, met my gaze across the table. She has always been the skeptical pragmatist in the family, prone to fact-checking during arguments and openly challenging falsehoods. She raised an eyebrow at me, as if silently asking, "Is he genuinely serious right now?" That's when Tina broached the subject of the future. She inquired about our big news and whether it pertained to us taking the next step. Ryan nearly dropped his fork and mumbled something about it not being the right time to discuss it. His grandmother, who possesses absolutely no filter and is my absolute favorite person in his family, cut in with, "So, are you two moving in together or what? Because Ryan said you were looking at apartments together." News to me. The furthest we had progressed in that conversation was me once suggesting we consider combining our Netflix accounts to economize. Ryan attempted to redirect the conversation back to himself, expounding on how his boss had provided him with a company card for business expenditures. I couldn't resist. I inquired about the types of expenses he was authorized to approve. He stammered something about client dinners and team outings. That's when I casually interjected, "Oh, speaking of dinners, Ryan took me to this amazing restaurant last week." "What was it called again, honey?" "The one where you met up with Leonard and Pablo." The color drained from his face faster than my phone battery on TikTok. Seriously, my phone can't handle more than 20 minutes of scrolling before dying. Anyone else? Before he could formulate a response, the doorbell chimed, perfectly timed. Tina went to answer it, and I overheard her delighted exclamation, "Oh, Cody." What a surprise. Ryan's expression suggested he might actually faint. Cody entered with a folder, looking entirely professional in his button-up shirt. He apologized for interrupting the birthday dinner, but explained he had some work documents Ryan needed to sign urgently for Monday morning. Tina, ever the gracious host, immediately invited him to join us for cake later. Ryan attempted to guide Cody towards the front door, but Ralph insisted they could handle work-related matters right there at the table, emphasizing, "Since we're all family here." Cody took the empty chair beside me, which I had, I confess, strategically reserved. Ryan gripped his fork so tightly I genuinely thought it might bend. That's when Ralph asked Cody how the big presentation went, the one Ryan had purportedly been leading. Cody appeared momentarily confused before comprehending the situation. He glanced at me, then at Ryan, and I could discern him making a pivotal decision. Cody stated that the presentation had been successful but clarified that their boss had delivered it, with Ryan and the team providing support. Ralph looked bewildered and remarked that this contradicted Ryan's account. I interjected, because I embraced the chaos, and asked Cody about Ryan's promotion. Poor Cody looked utterly uncomfortable, caught between a sense of loyalty to a coworker and an understandable reluctance to lie to an entire family. He fidgeted with his napkin and offered a vague comment about company restructuring. Ryan interrupted with a forced laugh and attempted to pivot the topic to sports or some other innocuous subject, but his sister was having none of it. She directly asked Cody Ryan's current job title. The ensuing silence was akin to dropping something in a public restroom. Everyone hears it, but no one wants to acknowledge it. Cody looked at Ryan, who was silently pleading with his eyes, then at me. I offered a subtle nod. He cleared his throat and stated that Ryan was an administrative assistant in the marketing department. The silence. Ralph slowly set down his fork. His grandma emitted a faint sound. Kayla muttered something that sounded suspiciously like I knew it. Ryan immediately launched into damage control, claiming Cody was mistaken, that he held multiple roles, that it was complicated. But the dam had irrevocably broken. His family began posing specific questions that he couldn't cleverly evade. When did you get promoted? He hadn't. Why did you say you had a team? He didn't. What about that corner office you mentioned? Also fictional. With each question, Ryan's fabricated narratives unraveled further. He kept glancing at me as if this was somehow my fault, which only fueled my determination to let every truth emerge. Tina, bless her heart, attempted to smooth things over. She suggested we all have some cake and discuss happier topics. As she proceeded to the kitchen to retrieve it, Kayla directly questioned me about the restaurant I had mentioned earlier. This was my moment. I took a deep breath and recounted everything, how Ryan had invited me to meet his friends, how he had relentlessly belittled me throughout dinner, how he had summarily dumped me in front of everyone, and then departed, leaving me with a $347 bill I could barely afford. Ryan attempted to interrupt several times, but his dad silenced him with an expression I had never witnessed before, pure, profound disappointment. Ryan's defense, that I was exaggerating and playing the victim, that I had embarrassed him in front of his colleagues by not fitting in, that leaving me with the bill was teaching me financial responsibility, was met with his grandma actually snorting in disbelief at that last absurdity. Cody, who had remained silent for the majority of this exchange, finally spoke up. He corroborated my story, adding that he had overheard Ryan bragging to coworkers about how he had put me in my place. He even produced his phone and displayed texts from Pablo, receipts, everyone, discussing what had transpired. Tina returned with the cake just as Ryan was attempting to portray himself as the aggrieved party. She set it down and inquired what she had missed. No one spoke for a moment, then Ryan's dad stated, very quietly, that they needed to have a family discussion about honesty. Ryan exploded in a full-blown temper tantrum. He accused me of turning his family against him, branded Cody a traitor, and declared everyone was merely jealous of his success. What success? He knocked over his water glass, pointed at me, and bellowed that a girl like me should be grateful he even bothered with me. His mom gasped. His grandma uttered something that I'm quite certain constituted elderly profanity. His sister simply shook her head, appearing unsurprised. I remained composed somehow and stated that the only thing I was grateful for was finally seeing him for who he truly was. Ryan stormed out, slamming the door with such force that one of Tina's decorative plates fell from the wall and cracked. The aftermath was oddly tranquil. Tina apologized to me approximately 50 times. Ralph appeared weary and saddened. Kayla assisted in cleaning up the spilled water. Cody apologized for his role in the awkwardness, but asserted he couldn't stand by while Ryan deceived everyone. Then, the most peculiar thing occurred. Instead of asking me to depart, they insisted I stay for cake. We all sat there, Ryan's ex-girlfriend, his coworker, and his family, consuming birthday cake without the birthday boy. In any other scenario, it would have been impossibly awkward, but somehow it wasn't. After cake, I helped Tina tidy up in the kitchen. She continued to apologize, expressing her utter ignorance of Ryan's extensive deceptions. She seemed genuinely heartbroken, not just by his actions towards me, but by the person her son had become. I felt a measure of sympathy for her, honestly. No parent wishes to realize their adult child is, well, rather awful. She quietly inquired if there had been any prior warning signs, and I conceded that, in hindsight, there were red flags I had disregarded because I had wanted to believe the best in him. As I was preparing to leave, Ryan's dad drew me aside. He thanked me for my honesty and apologized for his son's behavior. He appeared profoundly defeated, as if grappling with where they had erred in raising him. I assured him it wasn't their fault. Ryan had made his own choices. Cody offered to walk me to my car, likely sensing I needed a moment to process everything. As we walked down the driveway, he mentioned that Ryan had been experiencing problems at work for months, taking credit for others' ideas, fabricating his contributions, even forging client emails. He was, in fact, on his final warning before potential termination. Suddenly, Ryan's desperate need to appear successful made a twisted kind of sense. His entire identity was constructed upon this false image of achievement and status. When I considered it in that light, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I thanked Cody for his support and drove home in a strange state of emotional exhaustion mixed with profound relief, akin to finally removing an uncomfortable bra at the end of the day. Apologies for the unusual analogy, but I trust you understand the sentiment. Upon arriving home, I had 3 missed calls from Vanessa, eager for updates. I was about to return her call when my phone vibrated with a text from Ryan. "You've ruined everything. This isn't over." I didn't respond. I simply blocked his number and made myself some tea. I should have felt fear or upset, but honestly, I merely felt tired, and perhaps a little proud of myself for confronting him. I genuinely believed that was the conclusion of the matter. However, this morning my phone erupted with 13 missed calls from Ryan's mom, his sister, Cody, and several unfamiliar numbers. Something had transpired overnight, and based on the increasingly frantic voicemails, Ryan had completely lost control. Last update. I'm finally prepared to explain the saga of those 13 missed calls. Thank you for your patience as I process the whirlwind of events. Also, apologies for the delay. My laptop decided to perform a surprise 4-hour update precisely when I sat down to compose this. So, where were we? I awakened on Sunday morning, following the birthday dinner fiasco, to discover my phone inundated with calls from Ryan's family and Cody. Initially, I genuinely thought someone had passed away. My stomach performed that awful plummeting sensation as I scrolled through the notifications. 5 missed calls from Tina, 3 from Kayla, 2 from Cody, and 3 from unrecognized numbers. I returned Tina's call first, as her voicemails, variations of "Sabrina, please call me as soon as you can," indicated she was the most distressed. She answered on the first ring, sounding utterly exhausted. Apparently, after Ryan stormed out of the birthday dinner, he had embarked on a complete rampage. He had appeared at his ex-girlfriend's apartment at approximately 2 a.m., intoxicated and ranting about how I had ruined his life. This ex, whose existence I hadn't even been aware of, was understandably terrified and contacted Kayla, who then had to go retrieve him. But that wasn't the full extent of it. Ryan had also spent the entire night dispatching unhinged messages to virtually everyone we knew. He texted Cody, threatening to ruin him at work, a laughable threat from someone on the verge of termination himself. He had posted a lengthy, rambling status on Facebook about being surrounded by snakes and how people would regret betraying him. Most concerningly, he had posted my address in a private message to his friend Pablo, stating he was going to make me pay for humiliating him. Pablo, who evidently possesses a degree of moral integrity, immediately called Tina and forwarded the message, which explained her desperate attempts to reach me. I was seated on my couch in my faded old pajamas, hair still in yesterday's messy bun, attempting to assimilate all this information while Tina apologized roughly 50 times for her son's deplorable behavior. I suppose I should have been frightened, but honestly, I simply felt tired, like when your phone remains stubbornly at 1% battery for hours, just waiting for it to finally expire so you can charge it and move on. Tina insisted on coming over, merely to ensure I was all right, which was genuinely kind, but also prompted a frantic cleaning frenzy in my apartment. Nothing motivates tidying up quite like the imminent arrival of someone's mother to inspect your living space, am I right? I was literally tossing dirty laundry into my closet and scrubbing dried toothpaste from the bathroom sink when my doorbell chimed. It wasn't just Tina, Kayla was with her too. They brought coffee and those delightful pastries from the bakery near their house, which, I won't lie, might be what I miss most about my time with Ryan. We gathered at my tiny kitchen table, with its wobbly leg I've been meaning to repair for months, and they filled me in on the unfolding Ryan situation. According to Kayla, this wasn't the first instance of Ryan fabricating aspects of his life. In college, he had apparently informed everyone he was on the baseball team when he had, in fact, been cut during tryouts. He once claimed to be conversing with a popular girl who had no awareness of his existence. There was a consistent pattern of him constructing a fictitious version of himself, more successful, more popular, more everything. As they spoke, my phone incessantly vibrated with texts from friends who had witnessed Ryan's social media meltdown. Vanessa was in a panic, wanting to come over with her boyfriend, who practices kickboxing, just in case. She clearly watches too many crime shows, I swear. My group chat was overwhelmed with bewildered messages concerning the dramatic subtweets Ryan was posting. That's when my doorbell chimed again. I literally froze, momentarily wondering if it was Ryan. Kayla peered through the blinds and exhaled a long breath. It was Cody. Apparently, Ryan had been inundating his phone with calls all morning as well, and Cody wished to personally warn me, as Ryan had mentioned, paying me a visit. So there we all were, me, Ryan's mother, his sister, and his coworker, gathered in my living room on a Sunday morning, attempting to devise a course of action regarding this adult man-child throwing a tantrum because his deceptions had been exposed. If it weren't so incredibly stressful, it would have been hilariously absurd. Imagine trying to explain this scenario to someone who hadn't experienced it firsthand. Cody mentioned that their boss had already been made aware of Ryan's social media tirade. Someone had screenshotted and forwarded it, so Monday at work was undoubtedly going to be interesting. Kayla expressed concern that Ryan might resort to something reckless if he lost his job on top of everything else. We were all seated there, collectively brainstorming solutions, when my phone vibrated with a notification. Ryan had tagged me in an Instagram story. Against my better judgment, and despite everyone in the room advising me against it, I opened it. It was an old photograph of me from early in our relationship, asleep on his couch with my mouth open, captioned, "Miss Perfect who ruined my birthday isn't so perfect. A girl like you should be grateful anyone took pictures of you at all." That was his grand revenge, a slightly unflattering photo from 2 years ago. I actually burst out laughing, which wasn't the reaction Tina was expecting, but honestly, if that was the worst he could conjure, I knew I would be perfectly fine. Just as we were discussing next steps, there was a loud pounding on my door. We all jumped. Then we heard Ryan's voice, slightly slurring, "I know you're in there. Open the door." Cody immediately stood up, as if preparing to confront Ryan, which was sweet but unnecessary. I was already dialing the building security guard, a perk of a slightly more upscale apartment building. Ryan continued to pound and yell, and I could hear my neighbor's door opening as she emerged to investigate the commotion. By the time security arrived, Ryan had moved on to kicking the door. The security guard wasted no time. He informed Ryan to leave or he would summon the police. There was some back and forth that I couldn't quite decipher, then silence. The guard gently knocked and informed me Ryan had exited the building but was still in the parking lot, possibly lingering. Tina was mortified. She insisted on descending to confront her son herself, and honestly, I was relieved to let her. She was so visibly upset that Ralph, Ryan's dad, had to come pick them both up. The entire situation was simply heartbreaking. After they departed, Cody and I sat on my couch in stunned silence for a while. He finally broke it by inquiring if I possessed any alcohol, which felt like the most appropriate response to the mourning we had endured. We shared a bottle of wine I had been saving for a special occasion, and this most certainly qualified. By the time Cody left, it was late afternoon, and I was emotionally drained. Vanessa came over and stayed the night, just in case Ryan decided to make a return appearance. He didn't, thankfully. We ordered pizza, watched dreadful reality television, and attempted to process the absolute soap opera my life had become. The subsequent few weeks were, well, an adjustment. Ryan was terminated from his job after failing to report for 3 days and dispatching inappropriate emails to several coworkers. He temporarily relocated back in with his parents, a detail I only know because Kayla and I have maintained contact. She's actually quite pleasant, and we occasionally get coffee. Ryan attempted to contact me a few more times, leaving voicemails that oscillated between angry, tearful, and strangely nostalgic. I saved them all, just in case, but never responded. He created a few fake Instagram accounts to message me, but they were so transparently him. Who else would write, "You're making a big mistake," with that particular spelling error? That I simply blocked them instantly. The strangest encounter was running into him at Target about a month later. I was in the home goods section, contemplating shower curtains, and suddenly there he was, clutching a pack of socks and appearing as though he hadn't slept in days. Our eyes met, and for a second, I thought he might create a scene. Instead, he simply turned around and walked away, abandoning his shopping basket right there in the aisle. That was 3 months ago now. Ryan eventually moved to his uncle's place in another state, according to Tina, who still sends me holiday cards, a gesture that is sweet but undeniably awkward. His social media presence has become conspicuously quiet. Kayla suspects his parents finally severed his financial lifeline until he seeks therapy. As for me, I'm actually doing quite well. My apartment finally feels truly mine again, now that I've rearranged the furniture and replaced items that reminded me of Ryan. The most unexpected outcome of all this might be my surprising friendship with Cody. We're not dating or anything, though Vanessa persistently tries to facilitate that, but we occasionally grab lunch and exchange texts about amusing TikTok videos. It's comforting to have someone who witnessed the entire Ryan saga and understands why I now possess trust issues the size of Texas. Looking back at everything, I'm no longer consumed solely by anger. I'm also strangely grateful, not for dating Ryan, certainly not that, but for discovering his true nature before things progressed further. Imagine if I had moved in with him.